Hi everyone, Liam here, and welcome to episode 7 of the Kicking Podcast. We appreciate all the support and likes and comments on the previous episode, even though some were pro Djokovic, some were anti Djokovic. At the end of the day, I think what I stated in last episode of Djokovic not being done and definitely having more to bring to the table is clear to see, especially after Miami. Before we get into that, please, if you enjoy the content on the channel, like and subscribe. Really helps us grow the QualityShot tennis community. And yeah, with that, let's get into the podcast. The first aspect, obviously, I want to touch upon in this podcast was Djokovic's, I would say, revenge in terms of showing people how good he still plays and how much tennis he's got left in terms of high level tennis and big tournaments he's got left in him. He's come back to Miami after, I believe, 6 years of not playing this event. He, not many people knew exactly how he was going to play post Indian Wells performance against Botic van de Zandschulp, but he has been steamrolling for opponents so far here in Miami, especially playing against Lorenzo Musetti, beating him in the way he did in straight sets, against Sebastian Korda in straight sets, coming back from 2-5 down in the second set. And then obviously now having to come into this match. This is a pre Dimitrov match recording, but going into this match against Grigor Dimitrov, the head to head is 12-1 for Novak. So chance suggests that he's going to win this one again and get himself into a final, looking for another Master 1000 title, to be exact, his 41st if he is to win. I think it sets him up extremely nicely for the rest of the season, because if he goes into the clay court season off the back of a Masters 1000 title here in Miami, you could say that the road is only going up from here. It's definitely a better start to the season than he had last year. And last year when we look at Monte Carlo, he lost to Casper Ruud in the semifinals. I think he could have definitely, won that match if he had played 5% better in that match. And it's good to see that, he's got that level of tennis which he didn't have coming into the clay court season last year. It's definitely not going to be easy. I mean, you've got a very, very tough you've got a very tough lineup to play against. Obviously, you've got Grigor Dimitrov here in the semifinals. Then you've got either Jakub Mensik or Taylor Fritz in the final. But realistically, as long as he gets past Dimitrov, I think he gets past either Fritz or Mensik quite easily, probably in straight sets, just because of the fact he has a mental edge over Fritz based on the historic head-to-head and being able to absolutely just take control of matches against Fritz, even when he looks down and out sometimes. And then Jakub Mensik, obviously, Mensik is a great player, great prospect, but playing your first Masters 1000 final and playing it against your absolute idol sometimes, can be a bit overwhelming emotionally. So, there's going to have to be a lot of adaptation from Mensik if he is to make that final and face Novak. That's, I would say, the positive side of Miami in terms of the men's side. I think out of the big three players that you could think of in Miami, maybe four players that you think of in Miami coming into it, saying, okay, these are the guys with a title shot. Djokovic has been the one that has proven us that, he is nearly 38 years old, but he is still at the top of his game, because when you look at the likes of Alcaraz, Medvedev, and Zverev, I mean, you're not really seeing the level of tennis you would like to see from these players. Especially Carlos or Sasha. Medvedev, of course, losing to Muna in the second round. I mean, Muna just played an incredible match, and it was a very attacking match from him. He was very consistent as well. It was just one of those days, I think, for Medvedev, where nothing was really clicking and everything was clicking for Muna at the same time. So things just didn't really work out. So I wouldn't really worry for him, but obviously going into the clay court season, it's not really his favorite surface, as we all know. Obviously, he is a Masters 1000 champion in Rome, so he does have that ability to surprise us in the clay court season. But in terms of what I have expectations wise, it's not that great of an expectation, so I'm not really too worried that these results are going to affect his clay court season as much. I would say we're looking more at Medvedev towards the grass court season, and then going back into the hard court season in the North American swing. That's where our focus should really be on him coming back. When we're looking at the clay court season and players obviously who should have some form going into the clay court season, Zverev and Alcaraz are the two players obviously who I mean, they made the Roland Garros final last year. So those are the two players who should be looking to have some good form going into the clay, and they just don't have it. Zverev, I mean, made the final of the Australian Open as many times as I can say it. I mean, his only goal was to maximize the amount of points he could get under his belt between after the Australian Open final until the end of until Rome, because obviously, if you look at the rankings, Yannick Sinner is still the player who has gotten the most points under his belt so far this season, and he's only played one tournament. He's only won a title, and that's been the Australian Open only. You know, obviously 2,000 points under his belt. But Zverev, who made the final of the Australian Open, so he got 1,200 points under his belt, has played 5-6 events since then, and he still hasn't managed to get above that 2,000 points that Sinner made so far. So that shows you quite a bit that it's not really clicking for him at the moment. You know, you see these graphics from Tennis TV, from the ATP Tour, from all these, you know, social media platforms when he wins a match like his second and his third round match against, you know, when he won against Finney and when he won against Thompson, straight sets. Zverev's playing amazing. Forehand score was a 9.4 in their indexes and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean anything when you play against Arthur Fils, who is complaining about his back being completely messed up. I can't say it as Fils said on the camera. And you're losing in 3 sets when you won the first set. This is an event, Miami, of course, obviously, it's an event where Zverev has made the final before here in Miami. Of course, we're talking about Key Biscayne against, obviously, now it being at the Hard Rock Center. So different, you could say, surfaces and et cetera, but I'd say that the conditions are pretty much the same. He's made the final before here in 2018, and now he's struggling to get out of the fourth round. You know, it's not really something you really want to find yourself stuck into, especially when you are the world number 2 and aiming to become a world number 1 or aiming to win a Grand Slam, either or. So, yeah, I really hope Zverev finds his form on the clay. I mean, he didn't really show much form when he was going in the South American Golden Swing pre-Indian Wells in Miami. So it's not, I don't have that much confidence at the moment. I just want to see him play some grid tennis, because when he's on fire, it really brings a lot more edge to other players on the tour, because he has everything in his game. He's got the massive serve, the accuracy, he's got a huge forehand when it's on fire, and his backhand is extremely consistent. The only issue is right now he's playing more defensive tennis than he is attacking tennis. That's what we saw against Arthur Fils, and it's not something you can really make a world number 1 out of if you are not able to attack nowadays. Nowadays, tennis has become much more of an attacking sport, who can get on the front foot earlier, who can take advantage of situations, who can open up the court, who can take more risk on, who can take the ball up the line, both on the forehand and on the backhand. Zverev is playing a lot of defensive tennis right now, and it's not really something that I think will get him too far this season if he continues like this. So something needs to change. But he's got a couple weeks, you know, now of training before Monte Carlo and getting himself ready for the full clay court season. So hopefully he can find some form, because he does have quite a few points to defend as well during the clay court season, obviously reaching the final of the French Open. And it's something he needs to make sure he can keep under his belt. Speaking obviously of another player going into the clay court season who has a lot of points to defend, that's obviously Carlos Alcaraz. His second round loss to me is something where, you know, you are playing against someone who isn't ranked high, anything like that, blah, blah, blah. You know, if you look at it on paper, you're like, okay, well, you know, he's playing against the world 100, etc., blah, blah, blah. Doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, you're playing against David Goffin. Goffin is an underrated player. When he is on fire, he just hits the ball extremely well. I remember his match against Rafa Nadal in Madrid in 2022. And Rafa came through that match in the end, but my goodness, he was so close to beating Rafa in his home country on clay in amazing form. And he's beaten these guys before. He's beaten Rafa, Roger, and Novak before. So it's not something that he's unable to do. And he's beaten Carlos before. So going into the second round, many people sort of expected Carlos to come through it, but it's not one of those easy matchups that you might think on paper because of the ranking of each player. It's one of those matchups where Goffin was really, as he said, even put in his post-match interview, he just attacked everything and anything he could. He didn't allow Carlos any time to get onto his forehand. He just hit everything towards the backhand for Carlos, moved him outside of the court, and whenever he had the chance, he would attack into the forehand when there was the empty space. So his clear game plan worked extremely well. It's one of those things where even when I was looking at the match beforehand, I looked at the odds of the match. I was saying, I want to see what people are thinking, and Alcaraz was about 10-1 on that match. So everyone's super confident of Alcaraz winning that match, and I was like, this doesn't seem completely right to me, especially because of when Alcaraz won his first Wimbledon title in 2023, he went on to play the next weekend, the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday after he'd won Wimbledon. He went to the south of France in Nice to play the Hopman Cup, and his first match there was a singles match against David Goffin on the clay, and that was an extremely tight match, and that was a match that Carlos had to sort of dig deep and fight his way out to get a win, even though, it's not really a win that you would count as something that's super important, but it was one of those things that showcases Goffin, when he is playing extremely well, is great. Carlos obviously, had a lot more form back then as well, so he came through that match a lot as well, based on a lot of the fact that he was in great form, and the fact that he came into this Miami not in form and playing against Goffin, who just attacked everything, just showcased why he's in this position right now, that he's losing early in these tournaments. He's not really getting as much as he wants in terms of match play, or even when he played against Jack Draper in Indian Wells, sort of having an up and down. So you're starting really down in the match, then playing extremely well, and then going back down again. He's one of those players who can beat anyone in the world on any given day. I wouldn't go the opposite way of saying he can lose to any single person in the world, and like any single professional player on any given day, but he can get close to that. He can get close to some scares, and I would say this one here in Miami against Goffin is an example of that. Obviously, if we're talking about Jacob Finley beating Alcaraz in the way he did, the way Goffin did, then I would be more worried. But because it is David Goffin, he is quite underrated, especially for, I would say, the amateur tennis fan. I wouldn't be shocked if Goffin had gotten a good result under his belt, and he did. But going into the clay court season, hopefully he can find some form or get some points under his belt, especially in Monte Carlo, Barcelona, Madrid, and Rome, because he does have 2,000 points to defend at the French Open, and it's with Novak playing extremely well and Sinner being back, nothing's a given. So he definitely wants to have a sort of buffer period where he can get as many points as he can under his belt and make sure, if I am not to win the French Open, my ranking doesn't lower itself too much, or I can still maybe get a net gain or in terms of ranking points from points I've built up in the earlier tournaments. So yeah, we'll have to see there. That's in terms of, I would say, the four main players who we are sort of looking at in terms of going into most tournaments now. Who are the four main guys who are expected to win these tournaments, with Sinner being out? Looking at other players who have been making definitely a name for themselves. I mean, I've got two players in mind. I've got obviously Joao Fonseca and Alexandra Eala. Well, Eala, if I am to pronounce it correctly. Let's starting with Joao Fonseca. I mean, he has been playing some absolutely great tennis. It's clear to see that tournament by tournament, he's improving his game. He's adapting to conditions. He's understanding sort of the ins and the outs of playing different styles of players. He played a great match against Hugo Humbert here in Miami, obviously then making his way through and then meeting Alex de Minaur, playing against a top 10 player. And Alex de Minaur, I mean, had to fight extremely hard to win that match. I think it's both a testament to both players, to both Alex and to Joao. To Joao because of the fact that, he is coming into Miami. He was world number 60. I'm not exactly sure what his ranking is going to be post Miami, but he's creeping up little bit by bit, he's getting there. He's finding what he needs to do. He's understanding the game. He's getting the points he needs under his belt to sort of get himself more seeding potential later in the year at tournaments. If he is to find himself in the top 32 of the world by the time the US Open comes around, that's a seeded position at a Grand Slam. So he's slowly but surely building his ranking up, which is extremely great. And he's managing to push top 10 players to their limits. And we saw that with Alex de Minaur. But also, as I said, de Minaur has also a very positive aspect of looking at this, because if you were to put this match on de Minaur's plate, saying with the expectation that we have of Fonseca, with the hype we have around of Fonseca and the game he's playing, if you were to put this match in front of de Minaur 2.5, 3 years ago, would he have won that match here in Miami? Probably not. Probably not. He probably would have lost that match in 2 or 3 sets. It would have been an extremely tight match, but he would have lost it. I think the fact that he won that in 3 sets in the way he did, with the passion he did, with the enthusiasm, and just the mentality in that match, showcases the steps that he's made as a player to cement himself as a top 10 quality player. I mean, he's become Mr. Consistent, but also he's become a lot more aggressive, more determined, more selective of his shots to make himself have a better chance of winning a point and winning a set and winning a match. Sort of as, de Minaur of a few years ago was a very passive or defensive player, very consistent, sort of what you're seeing with Zverev now in terms of, very consistent but very defensive. De Minaur has adapted to that and made himself a lot more of an aggressive type of player, which is great to see. I think it gives him a lot of confidence going into the clay court season, going into just the rest of the season in general. I mean, last year at Wimbledon, unfortunately, he had to retire from the tournament, after playing against Fils, after beating Fils, because he had that hip issue. And it's one of those things where if he is able to stay healthy and continue on this path, ATP finals and by the end of the season and playing well at those, I think is something that he should be aiming for consistently. It's just one of those things that his game, he cannot afford to be too defensive at times, because everyone else on the tour is becoming a lot more aggressive. He's got that balance of being able to be extremely well defensively and extremely fast around the court, but also being able to play extremely aggressively. He just needs to improve that a little bit more. And as the year goes on, he will find himself in great positions. If we look at Joao Fonseca playing against Alex de Minaur in a year's time, I do expect the result to be different. But it's great to see that even now, Alex is able to handle this situation the way he did. Other players who have sort of brought in a great, I would say, surprise, I think, put as in, maybe not surprise, but have brought a smile to a lot of fans on the tennis world, is Alexandra Eala. She obviously is a staff who has come through the Rafa Nadal Academy. I think she was there for 6 or 7 years growing up. And, it's getting to that point where the players who were the initial batch of kids who came into the academy, which was founded 6-7 years ago, are now starting to show their face on the tour, both on the ATP with Christopher Wong, but also on the WTA tour with Eala. And it's good to see. She definitely has a lot of fans, a lot of support. She seems like a very genuine, nice player, just human being in general, very nice person. And it's great to see her being able to, have a lot of support just in terms of who she is and her personality and everything, but also just the level of tennis that she brought onto court so far this week. I mean, beating Iga Swiatek the way she did was extremely impressive. I was a bit saddened by the fact that obviously she lost to Jessica Pegula in the semis. I would have loved to see her get to the final. Even if she would have lost the final, I would have loved to see her get there and sort of showcase her ability on the big stage. But her time will come. I mean, coming into this tournament with a wild card and making the semis is no mean feat. I believe she's in the top 100 now in the rankings, and it's one of those things where I'm very happy that she's made this sort of statement early in the season for her, because it will just give her more confidence going into her future tournaments, and knowing that she has beaten top 10 players consistently this week, and she's got that level if she is playing well. She's got a lot of support behind her, so it's one of those things where the fans will be there, the support will be there. She just needs to make sure she continues improving on her game. But she's grown up in a very good environment, it seems like, and obviously being at the Nadal Academy, I think they've set her up very well for success. Hopefully, we can see more there. In terms of Sabalenka and Pegula in the final, I think Sabalenka just looks extremely well posed to win this one. Obviously, she lost in Indian Wells to Mira Andreeva, but I mean, Andreeva was on fire for the last two Masters 1000 tournaments coming into Miami. And I think it's great to see that Sabalenka is showing some good consistency as a world number one, as a Grand Slam champion. Obviously, not having been able to defend her title in Australia, but just showcasing that bit by bit, she's becoming more well-rounded in terms of every single tournament throughout the year. She's there in the mix to win it. And it's one of those things. I think she'll win it. And I think Djokovic will win on the men's side. So those are my predictions so far for the rest of the Miami Open. We'll see if they actually come true. My predictions for the final weekend of Indian Wells were completely wrong. So I predicted Medvedev and Alcaraz to come through the semis and meet in the final with Alcaraz to win. Completely wrong. Couldn't have been more wrong. So yeah, those are one of those things, but it is what it is. And with that, thank you guys for listening to the podcast. As always, if you have any questions, thoughts, leave them in the comments below or anywhere that you might be listening to this podcast. And as as we go on, if you enjoy the content on the channel, please like and subscribe. It just really helps us grow the community. It really helps us get the discussion going. I believe the next episode will be just before the semi-finals of the Monte Carlo Masters. I will be going, and it will be great. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or any thoughts, leave them in the comments below. And thank you very much for listening.